Welcome back to the table, everybody. Today we are here to talk about our holiday gift guide for Man vs. Meeple.
Tis the season.
Tis the season. And today we are specifically talking about party games.
Yeah, these games are what we would consider party games, games that can play a lot of people, sometimes an unlimited number of people, games that are great for family gatherings, holiday parties, and for gamers that maybe don't play heavier games or games maybe like that you would think of as traditional board games.
Yep.
But also, party games are great gifts for people in your life that you don't know if they play games or not, or like office work, coworkers and things like that, like this can be the hook that gets them into playing games with you. And I think we've got some great games on this list today.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say is the first one, Ryan?
So I'll start with one that just came out this year, and this is one that we have been playing almost nonstop since we got it, and that's Ready, Set, Bet. This is not a traditional party game, I would say, in that it simulates betting on horses at a racetrack.
That's literally what it is.
Which maybe not the best holiday, like Christmas party game, but what it does is it brings everyone around this table and it simulates that real-time feeling of betting on these horses.
Yes.
And you can either have somebody rolling some dice to move these horses around, you can download an app that simulates a race. And as strange as that basic premise sounds, it only takes a few minutes for everybody
to really get into it.
Yeah, to be totally into it, standing on the table, throwing those bets down. People are cheering for their horses.
I will say, when you guys first described it to me, I was like, I'm not going to like this game. I like horse betting, not my thing. Not something I would ever do in real life, but when we play it, it is like that. It's so high energy. You can have like up to 9 people around this table all trying to get in on the action, be like, no, I'm going to get there first. I'm going to get there first. And it comes down to those moments where you're like, come on, 10, come on, 10. I have so much money riding on you.
You've got people literally cheering when these fake horses cross the finish line. There's no real money to be betting. I mean, it's nothing like that. It doesn't even really betting in a traditional sense. You're just throwing out some multiplier chips to try to score some points. But it feels so satisfying when you like bet it big and your horse crosses the line to the point where almost every game we've played has ended with somebody cheering or multiple people high-fiving across the table when like that horse comes from behind and wins.
And it adds a little bit more to it. So each round you get these VIP cards, right? Which give you a little bit of flavor and like asynchronous player powers.
Yeah.
So it's not super straight, but it's very accessible too, right? I would play it with anybody. Oh, yeah. I would take it to any kind of holiday gathering and say like, hey, let's play this fun game. And I think it's a good way to get people into it.
Yeah, it's such an easy teach. It can play a larger quantity of people and it plays in about 30 minutes.
Yes.
It may be the most board game that we're going to talk about today, but it definitely still has that party game feel.
One that's not as much board game and one that's kind of more of a classic is Time's Up.
Yeah, Time's Up is so much fun.
And they've just had a couple new editions of it come out, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things for Time's Up. So if you don't know what Time's Up is, it's kind of like charades a little bit in that you've got a deck of cards and you're trying to get your teammates to guess what's on these cards. And like any of these charades types games, those boxes kind of get outdated.
Yes.
And you're drawing cards and you're like, I don't know who this famous person is or what this book is. So they actually have 2. They have the title recall version, which is like book titles and song titles and movie titles. And then they have just like your generic, like what they call the 21st anniversary edition. Both are very good and they've both been like modernized with new cards because these games very much rely on a pop culture knowledge, but also not, right? So I've played Time's Up with my grandma. Because it's all about trying to get them to guess the words.
Yeah.
Like, they might not know that Tom Holland plays Spider-Man.
No.
But if I can get them to say the words Tom Holland in a row, then we win, right? And that's part of the fun of Time's Up.
And it's like charades and password and catchphrase kind of all together in one mishmashed game. But it just leads to a lot of fun moments, a lot of fun times. And like you said, you could play with any kind of crowd.
Yeah, it's
Work friends or family friends or whoever.
Yeah, it's so great for that because you're kind of going through these multiple rounds and you're kind of building these actions to associate with these words. And then people will guess, like last round, you can only pantomime. And so like some of these pantomimes, if you're just walking by and seeing the way these people are like, you'd never know. But since you've kind of built it over multiple rounds, it's like, oh, that's whatever that song is.
Must be Tom Holland.
Right, it's got to be Tom Holland, right? So it's so much fun. And again, easy to teach.
Yes. One that's a little bit more board gamery, I would say, is So Clover. So Clover, I really enjoy. It's kind of like, for me, the step up from Codenames, I would say, because it has this like deduction element that you're doing with it. So what you're doing is you have this little clover, and on each of the sides there are 2 words, and you're writing one word to try to connect them. And what everybody else gets is just those connector words you put on each side. And they're trying to guess how did your little squares fit so that way you got these words as your guesses.
Yeah, each one of those squares has like a word on each side, and you get a fifth square added in from like a random pile. So like when they're laid out at the table, you're just trying to understand like, okay, this thing says fruit. They wrote fruit. Let's look at these clues. Well, if I turn this one this way, it says strawberry. And if I turn this one this way, it says like pie. Okay, well maybe that's strawberry pie, fruit, like.
But pie might be from the fifth one,
Right,
which you didn't know was going to come out.
And so if you're the person giving the clues and you're like, I put fruit and then strawberry is not one of the cards,
Yes,
like I didn't
yes.
and it can completely throw you off, and it's so much fun, and everyone's kind of, trying to twist these things around and say, oh, if I turn this one this way, this corner and this corner now line up. Oh, but now this one doesn't make sense. And so you have that kind of cooperative feel where you're trying to guess these clues. And it's one of those games where like when you're looking at your own board, your brain just doesn't work.
Yes.
And you're like,
Yes.
I have to think of a word that associates these two things. And then later somebody's like, well, if it was this, he would have said that. And you're like, yeah.
I should have said that.
I was smart, I would have. And it really, again, I think it does what party games do best. It gets everyone laughing. It gets everyone, kind of poking fun a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting too because when you see those, like you said, you're sometimes like, oh shoot, I can't think of anything for this. This is not going to be fun. Like I don't know what to write. But then somehow, without fail, when you put it in the middle of the board and people start guessing, it's fun, right? You're like, oh, I guess that was a good clue, or oh wow, I guess I know what I should have said.
It's funny to see people get to your answer with completely different logic.
Exactly.
You're like, I never even thought about that, but hey, they got there. They figured it out. That's a pretty recent release as well, as is the next one. This one's been out for somewhat of a year. It came out earlier this year. This is Green Team Wins. This is a party game for a bunch of players where you're going to be answering questions, trying to be the person that answers with the majority. Mm-hmm. If you answer with the majority, you're on the green team and you win. And it sounds so simple because it is simple. It is simple. It's either asking you a question, asking you to choose A, B, or C, asking you to fill in the blank, and you're writing on your board. But there's just so many, that reveal can be so epic.
Mm-hmm. I haven't played it yet, but I really want to get this one to the table because the thing about it is it seems so simple, right? You can play with any group of people. I know they have like a promo pack specifically about board games.
Yep.
So that's fun to play with more hobby gamers, but I think this is one I would just want to bring to like any kind of gathering.
Yeah, it helps you get to know people too because you get to see people's answers, and it also has what I love, that moment where everybody at the table is like, what? Like the question is like cats or dogs, and you're like, dogs. Yeah.
Obviously dogs,
Obviously
by the way.
dogs for Emily and I. And then you reveal and you see everyone around you put cat and you're like, what? I'm the only dog lover and all these cats. Like it's questions like that. Marvel versus DC. And you're like, oh, it's Marvel. And then you see 3 of their 4 people all chose DC and you're the odd man out. So they're getting points and you're not. And you're like, dang, I was sure that everyone was going to put Marvel, right? And so it's not all just questions like that. It might be like fill in the blank. Like the board game one, it was like blank player. I was like, oh, first player. Obviously.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, but they all put starting player. Oh,
see,
well, okay, so I'm out, right? And
I would have put best player. But
and it turns that game into it's a lot of fun, and it can get kind of loud and wild, and just like all the things again that you want to see in a party game.
And the one that we have to mention that definitely gets wild and fun is Just One, right?
Yeah.
This is the one. It was on all of our top 50 lists. The one game that made all of our lists.
It was on our top 50 of all time list. It was on most of our top game of the year released, and it's been on our recommendation list for many years. So in some ways it feels like cheating, I think, to say Just One, but in others I can't think of another game I'd recommend.
This is the game I would buy for people, for sure. This is the game where no matter who it was, I'd be like, I feel confident giving you this game because you're going to enjoy it. So all you do is you're writing one clue. Everyone's around the table is writing one clue to try to get the guesser to guess their word. But the thing is, if anybody gives the same clues, theirs have to go face down. So you end up with these times where like the most obvious answers aren't given, and instead you're given like just weird off the wall things, and they're like, how did these 3 words go together? When they finally find out what it is, they're like, oh, well, why didn't anybody say fruit? And you're like, everyone said fruit. And that's why they had to put theirs down.
What's really funny, though, is when everyone thinks everyone's going to do the most obvious answer, so everyone goes off the wall to the same weird off the wall answer, and you flip and you're like, man, if I just would have put fruit, it would have been okay. And again, like it's one of those fun games. You challenge yourselves to get a higher score.
Yeah.
And it's
cooperative too, so you're all playing together as well.
And I think that's a great thing about it too. And nobody feels really bad because like if you don't get it, it's probably because you're but sometimes you make those connections. Sometimes you see these 2 words that are so drastically apart, and you think about it long enough, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Here's that line where they meet. It's got to be this. And it can lead to, again, cheering and those big satisfying moments and the high fives. And like, we play games to have fun. And I think just one still remains some of the most fun I've ever had playing a game.
Definitely. So if any of these games have sounded cool to you, we highly recommend taking a look and checking them out for our gift guide for this year, for yourself to bring to parties. But
yeah, why not buy a gift for yourself?
I know.
You've earned it. You deserve that gift. But also for like Secret Santas or White Elephant parties, these are like the kind of games that you can get for anyone.
Yes.
Even non-gamers will probably have fun with these games.
And if you have any other recommendations, for sure put them in the comments below. See what else other people are recommending. But until next time, have fun at the table, and we'll see you then.
Bye.